This is the outline of like a typical class. And what I mean by typical class is the synchronous discussion meeting that we will have every Thursday from 6 to 8. So at the beginning, we'll take any questions just about issues, problems with Canvas, issues with Zoom, things like that. Any announcements, any library stuff you got going on, any meetings, complaints, and then hacks or any advice that people have about doing stuff. And then I'll do a short review of these video lectures that I'm doing, like this one, and really just to sort of really quickly go through it, and so you can ask me questions mainly. Like if there's stuff that I'm talking about and you're like, I really don't know what you're talking about. And that will happen because with law materials, there's always just some wacky thing where you're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What is judicial review? You mentioned that. I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't feel like Googling it. So anyway, that's what that's for. Do that short, then we'll have a 10-minute break, and then we'll go over basically the homework, the reference questions, and that takes a long time just to talk about, because what we'll do is we'll have one question and I'll ask someone to volunteer. If no one volunteers, I might do it myself, and I'll say, this is how I would answer this question. These are the resources I would look at. This is how I would do it. And then other people will say, no, I didn't use that resource. I did it this way. These were my search terms, and we'll talk about each question. And sometimes we'll have side conversations about, not really side conversations, we'll have rabbit hole discussions where we'll actually talk about something that's not related but that is important for the class. That sometimes happens. And usually I assign the question for some particular reason, like I have a really funny story, which that can be really annoying, but usually there's a sort of pedagogical reason that I ask the question and why, so I'll tell you why that's important. Then we'll have another break, and then we'll do the same thing for the discussions, because the discussion material is actually grown, and a lot of times it's actually there's a lot of issues that we can talk about legal information resources that are related to that material in the discussions. And then that's it. So that's pretty much the class. I've cut an hour off of the synchronous and given that to you for the videos. So you're still getting the same contact hours. You probably have more contact with me than most professors in the feedback I'll give you, because I'll give you feedback on all of the homework, the reference questions. I'll give you some written feedback. I have rubrics. I'll give you feedback. I'll give you feedback about the discussions and the book reviews and all that stuff. There's so few people in the class that I'm able to give pretty individualized feedback on everything. Attendance and participation. So I used to be a little bit harder on this, where I was like, look, if you're not coming, let me know, because in the past we've had like 4 people in the class, and like if 2 people don't show up, it's just me and someone else, or couple people, and it gets weird. If it's just me and one person, it's odd, right? So, and plus I'd have to drive like an hour and a half to get there, so I'd be like, okay. And so I would say, tell me if you're not going to be there. But now with COVID and all of the stuff that people are going through, if you can't make it, you don't even have to tell me in advance. You don't have to tell me why. Just don't show up, and we don't record. We won't record the synchronous meetings, but I can meet with you and we can talk about it outside of the group. And you don't have to tell me why. Like, you don't have to tell me, go into detail about, like, you don't have to tell me why. I think that's by itself is too much of a burden. So your attendance and participation counts for 14. So that's like every class. I think we meet like 14 times. You get a point. But I'm not like calling role or things like that. I just want you to participate to the extent that you can, because it enriches it for everybody else, and it makes it much more interesting for me. The reason I teach this class is the money, because I do get paid, and I find that my daughter, she does elite cheer, and it's very expensive, so this pretty much that it helps. And also now she goes to horseback riding, and that's expensive. So that the money is not a whole, I don't make that much, but it actually is, it helps. And two, for the students, I really find that this is kind of a recharge to my being in librarianship for over 20 years. It's really like contact with people starting out on their library journey is really helpful to me and motivates me in my librarianship. And that sounds really sappy, but it's actually true. And then third, I always learn more about teaching, and also, well, this is like maybe 4 or 5, but I have found that people that I have taught in the past are now my colleagues, and in the future maybe my boss. Like, I don't know, but there's a lot of, like, the people you see here you will see again. And I did not think that it's that small a world, but it really is. Yeah, so I'm doing it for my own like late career advancement.